Welcome to this week's Leadership Lunch Chat with myself, Amy Vetter, and Jen Wilson, my good friend. And we come here every week to really talk about the issues that we're seeing people face from the experiences of being out in the field during the week or past weeks and what is on our mind. And today, last week we had talked a lot about, from a partnership level, what we need to look at or what our decision matrix as far as taking investment or mergers and so forth. This week, we want to go another step deeper into empowering your future leaders and what that really means beyond the daily decisions that you're making, how to be transparent with those leaders if you want them to dedicate a career in your firm, your business, your organization, but also that they see that they have leadership or strategic ability early in their careers. And I think a lot of times what I have seen is, depending on your tenure, you can not be taken as seriously as people that have been there for a long time or their entire career. And even though you hire in people with fresh perspective, once you get the fresh perspective, is it really what you want to hear? Are you really open to hearing it? And challenge your own belief systems that you've had for years and years in your organization to be able to allow new ideas to come in.
There's a lot there. So I'm going to start with the end, I guess, of what you were talking about there, and the idea that when I bring in fresh perspectives, whether they're new employees that come from having experience working at other organizations like mine, or whether they are people that have different skill sets. We see this a lot, Amy. I know you'll relate with firms where they hire in, let's say, a director of HR or a CHRO or a marketer or an IT person, and that person has a totally different skill set, a background, personality, and they come in and share a bunch of perspectives that none of us has ever heard or had, and how open are we to that? That's kind of where you're coming from. And I know that when we do lateral hires, when we bring people back or into the organization that have not worked for us and grown up here, they tend to come in and say, well, at my firm, or whatever it is. And anyway, they tend to, have lots of input and compare and contrast to our organization. And they might have surprises, sadly, when they come in and they're like, ooh, you guys don't do this. And, that sort of thing. And being able to be open to that kind of input, being able to recognize that you're here for a reason. Like, we wanted this, we wanted your fresh perspective. We wanted your subject matter expertise. You and I are consultants. We come in and say things that, they have to sort of endure, I guess. But they felt like they wanted it when they hired us, or when they hired this lateral hire, or when they hired the CHRO. But then when the actual feedback, the comparisons, the ideas come, how often can we as leaders be both open to them and embrace them, and then do something with them? Not blow them off, not hear them nod, and then walk away and do nothing in silence, crickets fall, and we don't know, are we going to do anything with that idea I just brought up? Or are we going to address this issue I see? So we see that a lot, and it's very discouraging to the outsider or the new entrant to the organization when they've got these ideas, and it seems like they're sort of everybody's head nodding.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think too, what I hear happens a lot is, people are also tasked to come up with new ideas or new ways of doing things, be able to transform the organization. You and I have been talking about a lot of the same things for a lot of years. It evolves over time, but it is one of those things where, I think everyone takes those messages, brings it back in the organization, says, give me some ideas on how we could do this, or have you seen this, and so forth. But the problem is, how open are you to the investment? And as the managing leader, how are you making sure that everybody's lockstep to make the changes necessary as well? So, what I see a lot happen is there's things discussed inside a partner meeting where everybody might say yes, but then they walk outside that meeting and they don't intend to do, some people, anything that was said in that room. And then what happens is people in the organization have inconsistent experiences. There's an inconsistent culture, and they can blame the overall organization because they don't know that it's different in other departments or with different leaders. And really, nothing should be different with any leader. If it's agreed in a room, even if you're not 100% on board, if that's where the leadership walked out in an approval, then it's your job to figure out how do you embody this and embrace it and bring it into your team. And then secondly, it's not just you having to make the change, it's being open to getting ideas from those future leaders to be able to have their input heard. And if you really, I think, all the stuff Jen and her group has done, there's a huge issue in the manager, senior manager, director area of a pipeline to partner, which also creates part of the PE issue we were talking about last week. If you really want people to feel like there is a future for them in the firm, they have to be treated as if they are a future leader and you are empowering them to make change and not getting in the way of that change being made as well. You can give input, but sometimes we hold on to things because it worked for us 30 years ago. And that's what got me here today. But that same environment does not get us to where we need to go in 5 or 10 years, because that belief system no longer applies. It served you when it served you, but it no longer serves you into the future. And it's how do you actually release that and let that go so other people can then start making it their own as well.
I mean, and I what you're talking, I'm like, because I mean, I literally was with a firm yesterday and a young person said, hey guys, what got us here isn't going to get us anywhere in the future because everything's changed. He's so frustrated. And so the thing is that it all comes back to the reason I was kind of yelling or whatever that was, a hard, loud yoga exhale, is because
lion's breath.
Yes, exactly. I'm frustrated because it's selfishness again. It's, I don't want to do it. I know we probably have to do it. Wait till I'm gone. That's what it is. And it's human nature, folks. We are human beings. And so just recognize the frailty of our humanness. And as leaders who are more mature, we have to be willing to say, okay, we'll try it. Okay, I'll give that up. Okay, we'll shift the business in that way. And who will lead it? Sometimes it's not selfishness, like I don't want it. It's more like who will do it. And I always tell leaders who has the idea, they ought to be on the work group or the committee, the pop-up group that we're going to form to lead it. Like if they're passionate about it, they should be one of the people on it, and maybe the leader of it, maybe not, who knows. But you don't have to lead it all. Sometimes it's like, I'm so overwhelmed with all the stuff I've got. We can't do this now. And maybe that's, a way of letting go, is just to say, yeah, you guys go off and make a plan and present it to me and we'll figure it out. But this idea of like, first, not letting people talk about it and making it kind of awkward and stifling to bring it up in the room. That's the first problem. We can't do that. Second, when it comes up, trying really hard not to shut it down while it's being generated and discussed. And one thing that was super cool about this group I was with yesterday is nobody did any shutdown or smackdown at any time. There was never any awkwardness to anybody's authentic sharing. There was never any like ripple or eye roll or, any like negative feelings from authentic share about what was working or not working, which was cool, so that's number 2, let it come up and let it be heard. And then 3, if you can't do something about it because you genuinely as an organization have too much going on right now, set a date to come back and talk about it. Put it on the calendar, so it doesn't feel like it's blown off. It's just deferred. And my partner Tamara likes to say that she has a deferred stamp on the end of her fist. She's constantly like, deferred. we have too much going on, and so but deferred doesn't mean gone. Deferred means we're going to talk about it. It's coming up. It's like 6 weeks out. We're going to have a meeting on that. And then if we can action it, if we don't have too much going on, put a working group together and get them to study it and get them to make a proposal. And then be transparent about that proposal with the rest of the crew that aren't on the working group. Hey, we're expecting that proposal on Tuesday. We will review it and give feedback, and then we will report back to the larger group in 2 weeks. Don't let it just turn into whatever happened with that, or I wonder if that got quietly killed off in the back room, because that's the kind of stuff that builds distrust and also starts to stifle any more feedback or innovation, because it all feels like it dies in committee or something.
Yeah. I would say too, it's not just shutting it down, but also not making excuses. Because I think, or excuses for why someone is dragging their feet, why you are where it all doesn't matter. Like, it's just, I think it's really important that everybody keeps their eye on the ball and has to keep checking in. This is the work we're doing. This is what it's showing. Are we still on board with this? Like, however often you need to do it to keep making sure that everybody's lockstep, or are there adjustments or changes that need to be made? The other thing that's important is that even if there is no answer or no progress, that's still being told to team members below you. Like, haven't forgotten about it. We're working on it. We haven't started it yet. It did get deferred until, next January, whatever the answer is. Right. But don't be afraid to give an answer that's maybe not an answer that somebody wants. It's better that they get an answer than are left with a gap of communication, because in that gap of communication, people will make up their own answers or start making decisions themselves, because we all are in our own bodies and minds that I'm not important. they didn't take me into consideration. Now I start spinning into, is this the right organization for me? Is this where I want to work? If they don't take me seriously, they don't take my ideas seriously, they don't get back to me, I don't want to keep bothering them. All of those things start spinning out of control in a way that you don't want, which could just be an easy answer of, we have had this struggle. So these 3 things are our priority right now, and we just can't get to it. We know it's important to you, and we are taking it seriously. But just give the circumstance. I think, and from being at all different levels of an organization, I know when I wasn't in the leadership room, all the things I thought was being said in there that I was being excluded from. And then you get in there and you're like, there's nothing really happening in here.
Right.
But it's okay. Like, so you don't think it's this big deal of a meeting, but everyone that's not in the meeting is wondering what happened in the meeting.
Yes.
And especially if they're waiting for an answer. So communication is just so key. If you are trying to let people know that they are important to your organization, and just keeping them up to date on where you're headed, how important they are, and their opinion does matter.
So I just had a few thoughts, and one is totally random and silly, and I'm going to say it, and then I'll move into hopefully something more substantive, which is about people that want to go, that want to know their path to partner. So I want to come back to that. I'm saying it so I don't lose my thought. But I was just thinking about the Leadership Lunch Chat. I don't know how long we've been doing it, and we need to figure it out. But you and I have talked about making sure people were off work for the election last time. So we're definitely 4 or 5 years into this. Okay. And I wonder, like, if we should initiate a game for our regular listeners or something where, where they can, take a shot of alcohol or do a burpee every time we talk about selfishness, or every time because there's some stuff, no matter what the subject, we're going to
come back to it. Yeah.
The root of all problems and opportunities. Like, it's fantastic leadership when we can be more generous and more communicative, and it's pretty poor when we can't. And so anyway, I just had that thought, like, oh, here comes communication. Because it's just like, those are the biggies. They're super big themes, and overall health and well-being of your team, and health and well-being of your and sustainability of your organization. There's more than that, but those 2 are really root and deep root. So I just wanted to raise this idea of path to partner or path to promotion, because that is another, it's kind of a micro example, but it's so important and worries me. People want to know, like, am I on the path or am I not? Especially once we get to manager, senior manager, they want to know, am I going to be a part of that select group that gets opportunity to go forward? Am I not? When will I know? How long does it take? Once I get to senior manager, director, principal, depending on how you use those titles, I might want to know, will I ever read a partnership agreement? Is there non-equity versus equity? Is there a buy-in? How much is it? Is it funded, or do I have to go get a loan? Like a million things, but at the very beginning, it's more like, am I partner material? Am I shaping up to feel like that? And what could I do to better my chances? And people will raise that in employee reviews or in coaching sessions or whatever, and then hear nothing for 7 months or something, and I'll get them. I'm not kidding. I'll get
I'm with you.
We coach future leaders, and they'll be like, I still haven't heard a thing, and they're like, what do you think that means? Because then they start, in the absence of information, people make up their own, and it's almost always negative. So then they're like, that must mean they got nothing but bad news for me. And they don't realize that it could mean you forgot, which is gross, but you could have, they don't realize that it could mean you and the HR director are building a series of small group education sessions for the people on the path to share all the details, and you don't have it ready yet. And so you haven't brought them back together. But you could tell them that, and then they would stop thinking it means I'm not partner material and my leader doesn't want to tell me, which is what they start thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And they start updating their resume and taking calls from recruiters and stuff. I mean, it's so depressing to watch that cycle happen. It doesn't happen all the time. We have a lot of great firms and a lot of great leaders, and they tell the talent before the talent asks, and they stay on top of it, and they've built a transparent program and a process to get people up. But there are a lot of organizations that don't have that process, don't have those conversations proactively, and then don't really get with it once it's raised by the person, the talent. They just kind of take a slow river cruise
Lazy
kind of mentality.
river.
Lazy river. Yes, that's much better. A lazy river approach instead of throwing a motor on it and making sure these key people are retained, So anyway, I think that that's something else to just look at those little micro circumstances. Sometimes somebody will come and say, I don't feel respected by others in my department. I don't feel heard. You can't go, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. I'll look into that. I need some examples and I'll have some conversations, and then nothing.
Yes.
Somebody's telling you something really bothering them.
And it was hard for them to bring it up.
And they stewed over it for weeks or months, trying to get the guts to say it, and then silence falls. That's just a kiss of death.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, I think that's what we're trying to have us all look at, every one of us in our lives. Where are those kind of important ideas been placed in our hands, and what are we doing with them, and how can we be less selfish about them, more communicative, take them more seriously, give them enough weight to put our time and energy into it.
Well, and with that, our leadership lunch chat time is over for today. Thank you so much for processing this with me, Jen, as usual. I think we're off next week, so it'll probably be the week after. So we will see you then. And if in between that time you have questions or comments you want us to go over, please let us know on our social media. Thank you very much.